Lori here. I'm here today to do the second part of my April reading wrap up. This month, as I said in my first wrap up, was very weird. It was just a weird month. There was a lot of construction in my room happening. I wasn't in my room for half the month. We lost internet at the last half of the month. It was a weird month. But I did wind up getting a few things read in the second half of the month, and I want to sort of chat through them with you. I had some pretty good books that I read and some okay books, so let's get into it. The first book that I finished reading in this part of the month was City of a Plague God. Here is a picture, and this was an arc that I read on my Kindle from NetGalley. I really like this book. Earlier in the month, I read the new Gracie Kim book that's actually coming out in May. This one I found to be super fun and just really poignant to 2021. It's set in New York City, literally right where I work in Astoria, Queens, which I thought was just so fun. And it follows this young boy. He's a Muslim American teen, and a plague god decides to take over New York, and a plague is sort of expounded on New York City. And it's just so freaky sometimes how life happens that this book was written so many months ago and it was published in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. I just found that to be just so unique timing wise. But I really liked it. I love when books have male leads. You get them so rarely in YA and in middle grade. A little bit more in middle grade, but I really like this book. I love the characters. I thought it was great. I will definitely be checking out book two whenever it comes out. It has intrigued me. I just love the setting of New York City. It was great. I wound up giving it 4 stars, and I really liked this read. And then the second book that I wound up reading in this half of the month this was actually a nonfiction read, and it's The Art of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. Here is a photo. So my room flooded at the very end of March, and it was decided that we were gonna basically redo my whole bedroom. And once I had removed everything from my bedroom, I was in a cleaning phase. So I decided to listen to Marie Kondo's book before I really started doing this process. And I was really nervous going into this book because I've heard oh my God, she's gonna make you get rid of all your books. And she didn't, because books bring me joy, and that's sort of her thing. But it really did make me look at my room and my collection and what I was keeping and what I was giving away. I really liked it. It sort of revamped how I think about things and how I think about sort of keeping my room tidy and stuff like that. I really liked it. Will I use everything in my life in the future? Probably not, but for a most part, I really appreciated it. And then later in the month, I picked up her sequel, which is called Spark Joy, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. And I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're contemplating revamping stuff, or even if you're not thinking about revamping stuff. I would still give it a listen because it might inspire you. It definitely inspired me. Um, and then the next book that I wound up picking up was The Gilded Ones by Nirna Forna. I did have a physical copy of this one, but I did get this one from Owl Crate. I really like this book. I've heard so many good things about this book for almost a year, because they got the arc went out of one of the Fairy Lou boxes. But I enjoyed this book. It had some elements that were very reminiscent of Divergent or some other concept, but you basically follow these girls, and on their 16th birthday, they're basically cut to see if they bleed, and if they bleed red, they're okay, but if they bleed gold, they're basically killed. And she is bled gold, but she is basically sent to be a warrior for the king's army, basically. And it just sends her on an adventure. I really liked it. I will say that the pacing in this sometimes was very stop go, really fast paced and then stop, really fast paced then stop. There was also a few time jumps. It did deal with grief a lot because there was a lot of stuff about her mother. There was some found family elements that I really enjoyed. The romance was unique. I thought that the plot was really unique as well. It wasn't so much I could predict everything. I'll definitely be checking out book two. I thought the diversity was really interesting as well. It was a great read, and I wound up giving it 4 stars for review, and definitely one I would definitely recommend that you check out for sure. And then the next book that I wound up picking up was Unbirthday by Liz Brashwell. Struggled a little bit with this one, and there's some twisted tales that I love. Like, I've really enjoyed some of them and I've really struggled with some of them. This was definitely one that I really struggled with. It basically asked the question, what happens if Alice had to save Wonderland and she was very, very late? So it sort of had some elements of like Alice growing up, and Wonderland being sent, being sent into chaos, and she kind of has to return to save Wonderland. The plot just did not capture me. I will say that. There was like an underlying romance plot, but mostly the Wonderland stuff and the going back to past to present to Wonderland to the current timeline just didn't capture me. I liked it. It wasn't my favorite. I thought it was different. I don't think the question really captured me. I don't think the world building was that great. But overall, I enjoyed it. If you're a massive Alice in Wonderland fan, I think that you would really enjoy it. I just struggled with a little bit, and I only gave this one 3 stars for review. But again, sometimes all the Twisted Tales aren't going to work for every person. This one just didn't work for me. But I still say that you give it a shot. Maybe borrow it from the library or get it like as an audiobook that you can maybe listen to. I definitely was more successful when I listened to it than when I read it physically. But that's my thoughts on that. And then the next book that I read was The Hidden Staircase by Carolyn Keene. I have a physical copy of this one too. This is the second Nancy Drew book. I've really been enjoying the television show, and I never read these books as a kid. So I decided that I'm gonna pick up as many as I can from my library. So this one I actually had a physical copy of. I actually had 2 copies of this one when I was cleaning up my shed. Embarrassing. But I actually like this mystery a little bit more than the first mystery. This was basically like a dual mystery. Nancy's friend told her that her aunt's house was being haunted, and they sort of had to go on an adventure to figure out if the house was being haunted. And then there was also a mystery involving Nancy's dad. And I like when there were 2 seemingly insignificant mysteries and they sort of come together. I like books about haunted houses. I don't know why. I'm terrified of haunted houses, but I like reading about them. Go figure. But I also really like Nancy in this book. Again, it was just a fun read. I mean, this book is, I think these books are published in like the 20s, but they're fun. I like also watching the TV show and seeing how they sort of update it. But I liked it, and I wound up giving this one 3 stars for review. And then the next book that I wound up reading was the other Marie Kondo book, Spark Joy. Here's a photo. I would definitely recommend this book to someone who has a full house, a little bit more than me. Like, I took a lot from this book, but there were some sections that just don't really apply to me because I only have one room. But I felt like that the way that she kind of talks about like a house overall and cleaning and storage and like every room in your house, every chapter was about a different room. Like one was about the kitchen, one was about the bathroom, one was about your bedroom, your kids' room. I just found it to be super helpful. Of course, this stuff I won't take and add it to my every single day life, but I really do like her methodology. I definitely would like to watch them like her TV show on Netflix eventually, but I just found it to be really helpful, and really it helped structure my like cleaning. It was very, very helpful with all that. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. Definitely read the first book first, but this one was a lot more specifics and had some very, very good pointers, and I really enjoyed it. Definitely recommend it if you are contemplating a spring cleaning. So for sure, definitely check it out. And then the next book that I wound up reading was another audiobook. These are a little bit out of order because I lost internet, so the order on these is a little bit off. But the next book that I just wound up finishing recently was When He Was Wicked by Julia Quinn. Here's a photo. And this is Francesca's book. I just finished this earlier this week. This is a widow romance, and I really liked it. This book series keeps getting better and better and better. I think I think I gave this one 4 stars, but I've given most of them between 4 and 5 stars for review. The one thing I would have liked a little bit more about this one is if the Bridgerton family was a little bit more involved. And when you read the book, you'll see why. Sort of like when I read To Sir Philip with Love. Again, the Bridgerton family wasn't as involved in those two books for various reasons, but I'm hopeful that for Hyacinth and Gregory's book, since those are more likely to be set in the Bridgerton where they actually live, that I'll see the Bridgerton family a little bit more. But I love them. I really love this book. I thought that the widow romance trope was one that I hadn't read before. I am very new to historical romances. I always say that, but I'm just loving it. I think Julia Quinn has a really nice balance of the steamy scenes, but also the heartfelt family moments, which is what I'm here for. And I really liked it. And then the next book that I wound up finishing reading was Lost in a Never Wood by Aiden Thomas. A little bit out of order, so I apologize. But this is Aiden Thomas's newest release. It is a Peter Pan retelling. What a mystery twist! So it basically follows this girl named Wendy. And 5 years ago, her and her brothers go missing, and her brothers are never found. She is returned 6 months later with no memory of the situation. And in her present timeline, these kids start going missing. And when a young boy appears in town and calls himself Peter Pan, Wendy starts unraveling the mysteries of who this person is and how he's connected to her because he seems to know her. It is a really well crafted Peter Pan retelling. I really love this book. I will admit, the last 5 or 6 chapters will kick you in the emotions. It's a little bit of a hard read, the end of it, but I love this. Aiden Thomas's writing style is superb, captures me from page one. I loved reading about Wendy and her family. It also tackles grief, anxiety, depression. There's also elements of a romance. There's also a strong friendship dynamic. I love this book. I gave it 5 stars, and I cannot wait to see what this author is working on next. And then the next book that I finished reading was Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This book was a little bit different. It followed Pippa as the aftermath of the first book when she's solving the murder. This one, she's solving like a disappearance, and she winds up making a podcast. So you sort of follow the disappearance as she's kind of filming a podcast. That element reminded me a little bit of I Hope You're Listening, which I read over the summer. I liked it. Again, sometimes mystery thrillers for young adult can get a little bit unrealistic at points, and I thought the ending was a little bit rushed, and the ending was just a little bit like crazy, but I did like it. I like the podcast elements. I like that this book was focused on a missing person in like the harder range when like if this person goes missing, the police aren't gonna do much because they can walk away from their life as if they want to. I hear that all the time in the true crime cases that I watch. I really like all the elements of this story. I'm really excited to see where book 3 goes, but I liked it and I wound up giving it 4 stars. And then the last thing that I finished reading in the month of April was Avatar: The Search. I read all 3 volumes, and this answers the age-old question, what happened to Zuko's mom? I will admit, it did not go the way that I thought it was going to go. By far, it just did not. It went a very different direction. I still really liked it though, and I wound up giving it overall like 4 stars because I read the omnibus. I also did start listening to a new Tessa Dare book. I read about 250 pages in Way of Kings. I'm probably gonna pick that book up again later, maybe at some point in May, but I just needed a little bit of a break. I'm really struggling with Brandon Sanderson's adult novels. I don't know how I'm going to negate that if I'm going to keep reading. We'll see. But that is my wrap up for the second half of March. Oh my God, April. Oh my God. Sorry, my months are all out of whack. But let me know in the comments what are some books that were your favorite for this month. For me, it was definitely Lost in a Never Wood for sure. And then another book that I really enjoyed in the second half of the month was also, I really like City of a Play God, and honestly the nonfiction reads by Marie Kondo really stood out to me, and I really helped me rearrange my bedroom. So I will talk to you guys for my next video, and comment below about what is your favorite book of the moment. Bye, friends. Bye, book lovers.